Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I am delighted to have Heather Peck here. Heather, you can wave if you like.
Yeah.
So we've got a few people who are coming in right now. So we'll just give people one more moment. Now, if you do need to go grab yourself a drink, please do. And thank you so much to those of you that have also submitted your questions.
Follow my example.
Yeah, exactly. You can see Heather's already on the champers. But if you're in the US right now, of course, it's morning for you. So I doubt that you're going to be having your champers. Or it could be anywhere. It could be anywhere in the world.
Australia.
Absolutely. So we're going to cover some questions first about Heather's exciting new book series. And then also we're going to address the questions that we've been sent, which we've had quite a few. And so thank you so much, everybody. Right. Okay, let's have a look. Oh, yeah. Lots of attendees. Fantastic. Now we are streaming live to YouTube. My name is Lou Peck from the International Bunch. And let's just begin. Now, and also just to note that there is a chat feature or a Q&A feature in this Zoom webinar. So if you do have any additional questions that you want to ask, just pop them in and hopefully we'll get time to address those at the end. This session is being recorded, so you will get a link to the recording as well. Okay, let's begin. Heather, I know we're kind of going to go straight into these questions here. So do you want to first just mention and talk to us about this new book of yours, what it's called and what it's about?
Well, first, if I can I just add my thanks to everybody who's joined in. It's such a shame we can't have a big party with lots to drink and eat, but I do hope you've supplied yourself with something celebratory, as I have, and I'm really glad you've joined in. Yeah, Secret Places. Secret Places is a crime novel which starts in North Yorkshire, and then the detective in the novel, one DI Greg Geldard, follows a trail all the way from North Yorkshire to Norfolk, down the Norfolk Broads, and even out to sea before he captures the person he is pursuing. I'm being really careful because I don't want to issue too many spoilers for anybody who hasn't read it. Perhaps I should apologise at this point for the dogs barking in the background.
Heather, that's normal working life now, or that's just normal
Absolutely.
life whenever you have these calls. I purposely left one of my dogs down there because I was just thinking, no, because if yours start, mine will start. Okay, so what kind of research did you do before writing the book?
Well, to start with, the original location for Secret Places, which begins in a hidden auxiliary unit left behind from World War II on a farm in North Yorkshire, that place actually exists. And I was there when some archaeologists came to explore it. Although I should perhaps say that on that occasion, what they found is not what is found in the book. Again, I'm avoiding spoilers. So an awful lot of the research, I suppose, is based on my, not so much research, it's based on my experience of farming, of North Yorkshire, of sailing the Norfolk Broads, of volunteering in Coast Watch on the Norfolk coast. All of that is within the book. I did do specific research on topics where I felt I didn't know enough. So, for example, I saw Stam Steggles at Fielding Cottage to talk for him to educate me on goat farming. And I went to Norwich Crown Court and the Old Bailey when I was wanting to check out processes in courts. So it was that sort of research.
Fantastic. And how did you build the world around Secret Places, and how long did it take for you to write? And I know that actually that is also a question that we've had from Linda about how long did it take you to write this novel. So how did you build the narrative around Secret Places, and how long did it take you to write it?
How long it took to write? I'd say roughly 6 months. environment for Secret Places, as I said, is based on places I'm very familiar with and a rural and agricultural environment that I'm very familiar with. To me, the much more interesting part of the world of Secret Places is the characters in it, because they change as they interact with each other. Each interaction between a number of characters or a pair of characters changes how they develop and the things that they do next. So the really fascinating part for me was how the characters eventually began to take on a life of their own and went in directions that I hadn't predicted when I started writing.
Oh, brilliant. And why crime or crime fiction?
Essentially because I write what I like to read.
Yeah.
And I really like crime fiction. I really like fantasy, but I think to write fantasy successfully, you need an incredibly creative idea to base the book round. And while I do have the germ of an idea, I don't think it qualifies as incredibly creative, like, for example, like in the books by Jodie Taylor.
Yeah.
I've written 2 other books, one about Springer Spaniels, which probably won't come as a surprise to some of the people listening, and one about the animals on a farm, both the farmed animals and the wildlife. Neither of those is published yet, but that's a possibility. But crime, it's not only for me fun to read and therefore fun to write, but also it provides an opportunity to explore some quite serious issues in a way which is immediately accessible to lots of people. So Secret Places gave me the opportunity to explore issues around abuse and control in close relationships.
Yeah.
And the sequel will explore other issues.
And so Heather, for those people that don't know you very well, that have joined or are watching this session, did you just want to explain your comment about the Springer Spaniels?
Well, I have 2, you see. A, I have 2 Springer Spaniels, and B, in the past, I've done a lot of work with organisations like Dogs Trust and the Advisory Council on Dogs, all focused on dog welfare. So that's why I know there are people out there who won't be surprised to find dogs figuring large.
And also as part of this Q&A, hey?
You heard them again, yes.
I think you've got one at your feet right now, haven't you?
No, she's disappeared, actually. She's going to investigate the rest of the house. So.
She must have heard me and thought, oh, no, not her. So what made it into the book versus what didn't make it into the book?
I can't really answer that question, because the things that didn't make it into the book will probably make it into future books. So
I see. I get what you're saying there.
Yeah, I'm keeping my powder dry. I did, but also there was an element of streamlining, of not bogging down a storyline with too much material or too many characters. It was one of the bits of feedback I got from 1 or 2 of the readers who read it in a very early stage.
And that's also excellent advice for someone that's actually starting out and writing a book themselves. Now, what did you enjoy most about writing Secret Places?
I enjoyed I've touched on it already. I really enjoyed the way the characters grew and evolved and took me into places that I wasn't anticipating when I started off. That was great fun. And it's also meant that while I had seen a different character in Secret Places as the main linking character through to the next book, that changed because the personality that's Greg Geldard grew during Secret Places. And so he is the main linking character to the new book, although others that you met in Secret Places also reappear in the sequel.
I mean, you've touched on your second book there, and I think that's really important, isn't it? When you have a book series, that you do identify with the characters, and then you're effectively following them on a journey like you do with a friend, and you see them grow and develop, and also because you get to know them better. So what did you enjoy least about writing a book or this book?
I don't think there was anything I positively disliked. I think some days you thought it took a bit of discipline to sit down and do the writing. But that's a bit like, you know, on a rainy day and you know you've got to walk the dogs and you look out the window and you think, oh, blimey, do I really have to go out in this? But you always feel glad that you have when you've done it.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much the same with writing the book. Sometimes I thought I really must sit down and write my couple of thousand words because otherwise I won't keep up the momentum. And I always felt glad when I'd done it. The one thing that is really tricky is keeping on top of all the detail. You know, you're merrily trotting through your next 2,000 words and you mention a character and then you think, oh, Lord, what was the surname I gave this character? Or did they have brown hair or did they have blue? You know, did they have brown eyes or blue eyes, brown hair, blonde hair? So I end up with a big spreadsheet on Excel with detail of individual characters and individual situations that I can refer back to. Otherwise,
I love that, because I was going to ask you, how did you manage that? But you've told me with an Excel spreadsheet. Very organised of you, but to be fair, I wouldn't expect anything less. So if we move away from the book for a moment, what do you like to read, Heather?
I've said I like crime fiction, I like fantasy, I like historical novels. I must admit, I read more fiction than I do non-fiction. I love writers in the crime area, I like authors like Dorothy L. Sayers, P.D. James, Reginald Hill, Stephen Booth. Ellie Griffiths is another writer who sets some of the books in Norfolk. I love all those. The fantasy, the obvious is Tolkien, but and more recently, I should say, Jodie Taylor, who I mentioned earlier, who is just so incredibly creative and imaginative. I'm just full of awe of her imagination. And in historical novels, I think you'd go a long way and fare a lot worse than, and the books by Mary Renault about ancient Greece, and the Patrick O'Brien series about the Navy during the Napoleonic times. All of those will keep me absolutely fascinated for hours. And
so, are there any, say if I was to ask you, what are your top 3 favourite books that you've ever read? What would they be?
The problem is you'll probably get a different answer depending on which day you asked me.
So today is Thursday, the 4th
it would be
February.
Lord of the Rings, very predictable, I'm sorry. To Kill a Mockingbird, which I absolutely love. And probably The Bull from the Sea by Mary Renault. But that would run in a close competition with any of the Patrick O'Brien books.
So no Harry Potter?
No, I love those. You see, if you'd ask me tomorrow, I might say Harry Potter.
Maybe it depends when you walk past because you have, books all over your shelves. And when you walk past, It's like, what caught your eye today?
Yeah.
So I have some questions that we have been asked. And so I'm going to, we're going to cover Leslie's first. Mm-hmm. What's writing a crime novel something you had wanted to do for some time?
I have written for as long as I can remember. I still have tucked away in a drawer somewhere the entire manuscript of a historical novel I wrote when I was 11.
Wow.
About the Romans in Britain. And it's a hoot now when you read it now, but I still got that. And I started and never finished, like an awful lot of people, hundreds probably of books, just the odd chapter, and then life overtook me and it went no further. Yeah. What made me finish this one was the impetus of doing the Introduction to Crime Writing course run by the UEA and the National Centre for Writing. That was a really inspiring experience. And it was when I'd finished that, I thought, right, if I don't do it now, I never will. Buckle down and do it.
What did you find so inspiring?
Mostly, I suppose, well, two things. The feedback, which was great, and wasn't just from the tutor, but we all gave feedback. Every member of the course got feedback from every member of the course. And that was really helpful, getting all these different slants on your work. And the other thing was that the exercises you were given to do gave lots of new ideas about how to tackle a particular problem, or how to get a new idea, how to practice a particular piece of writing. All of that was very inspiring. I would recommend it to anybody, really.
Fabulous. And so, in actual fact, you answered Leslie's next question, so that's great. I like the efficiency there. Now, Liz has asked, lots of people start novels, but they never finish them. And you touched on this, but what kept you going?
I think it was a bit like the only time I've ever seriously gone on a diet. And what kept me to the diet was getting on the scales every week and finding I'd lost a couple of pounds. And the fact that it was working, meant you stuck with it.
Yeah.
And for me, it was once I'd got over a few days, a few weeks of writing a couple of thousand words a day, it had mounted up. It went together. It made sense as a structure and as a story. And so the more you did that, the more the incentive was to carry on until you finished it.
Absolutely. I love that. I love what you just said about being on a diet. That was very funny. I think that might turn into a quote for you, Heather.
Nerve.
It's like writing a book is like being on a diet. So I know that we talked about the different types of books that you've read and the genres that you really like, and those books that you also really like. But specifically going to Caroline's point, how did you get the inspiration for the theme of this book? Was there anything specific?
I think there were two things, or two categories of things. One was that secret World War II hideaway on the farm in North Yorkshire. Because at the time, when we discovered it, because of the archaeologists coming along and saying, we think you've got one, we'd like to have a look at it. And that was just so amazing. And then finding out more about those units and how they were set up and what they were like through the Air Museum at Parham. So that gave me that initial idea for a place which would trigger an event that would make it as a crime novel. The other theme is the one around abusive control. And I suppose that came out of a whole range of things, including the experience of volunteering within Citizens Advice. And indeed, more recently, as part of the voluntary witness service in the courts, because the courts are prioritising domestic abuse cases during over this last few months. I'm sorry about the noises. It's one of my dogs complaining because she's shut out.
You can let her in if you like, Heather. I'm sure everyone would love to see a Springer Spaniel.
Perhaps I'd better. She's going to come in otherwise.
So is this Fern, is it? Oh, there's Fern.
She'll sit under the desk.
Fern always reminds me of a cartoon that I used to watch, like D'Artagnan. Mm-hmm. She always reminds me of one of the Musketeers.
Anyway, sorry. Actually, that fulfills what I've just been reading on Twitter is now a requirement, that if a pet appears on a webinar, you're supposed to introduce them. So there you are, Fern and Harry. No, I think there are two things about the whole abuse issue. And the fact is that there tends to be an assumption that A, it only happens to women, and B, it only happens to women who live a certain type of life. None of that is true. And I've sat through training courses within Citizens Advice when we've heard some heartrending stories from people in all walks of life. And what's really worrying is that if you sit down with a group of 10 women, about 6 of them will say they have had some of this experience. So it seemed to me worth highlighting that as an issue that people should be sensitive to.
And are there any other sensitive issues that aren't spoken about as much, or anything like that that you're looking to cover in the future in your books?
There are 2 or 3 covered in the sequel.
Yep.
So I'm not going to talk about that now because that would be those would be spoilers.
No problem. Okay, so right, we have one here, which was, what made you choose the range of locations for secret places, and which ones have meaning for you personally, if they do?
Well, I chose them because of my familiarity with them. So the farm in North Yorkshire was a place I'm very familiar with, and particularly the locations on the Norfolk Broads. Many of them I've sailed through or moored at when my husband and I had a boat on the Broads. So for me, it's a particular advantage to be able to describe somewhere that you know in your heart, and be able to make that come live for somebody else. So I suppose they all had meaning for me because they were places I'm very familiar with. Even Whitby, which figures briefly, is a place that I know and love, and it was fun to sort of slide that in as well.
And just in case there's like a North Yorkshire Norfolk divide, I'm not going to ask you which way is your favourite place, okay?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They're both wonderful places, wonderful people in them, and I really mean that.
Oh, I'm not in any of those places.
Well, you could always move.
Yes, that's true. I love Wales. Okay, so Alison has asked, and you can tell here that Alison has had a secret preview to the book, because your book, unless she read it in a day, because your book was launched yesterday, and we're doing the Q&A today, but Alison specifically mentioned some phrases. I feel like this is a star pupil. So where do the phrases swallow a wasp, which is on page 36, and walking round the flock to make sure they were all the right way up, page 75, come from? Are these from Norfolk, or are these from North Yorkshire?
Neither really. Swallow a wasp was just one I invented because it seemed to capture the mood of the moment in that part of the dialogue. Other people will now notice it probably when they get there. The walking around a flock to make sure everything's the right way up is a very common experience for anybody who's kept sheep. So that arises out of my experience of sheep farming.
And what does that mean? You can't just leave us hanging there.
Well, essentially, in the spring in particular, when sheep are still in full fleece, and particularly if it rains and the fleece gets wet, that makes the sheep itchy, so she lies down and wriggles and rolls a bit to scratch the fleece on her back. The heavy fleece then holds her upside down. And because, and this is going to sound weird, but because a sheep can't burp when it's upside down, and because the rumen is generating gases all the time, she will die if she isn't turned the right way up. And worst of all, if she's immobilized and moribund, birds will come and peck the eyes and all sorts of horrible things like that.
Lovely.
If anybody's eating lunch or something. So you are doing a shepherd an immense favor if you're driving along and you see a sheep upside down. Just go and turn it gently the right way up. But walking around a flock in certain times of the year, once, twice, even 3 times a day, to make sure they're all the right way up is routine for a shepherd.
Wow, that's fascinating. You see, as well as like speaking to you about the book, we're also learning new stuff about farming.
But actually that was one of my sort of secret motivations, I suppose, in that farming and agriculture is an environment I love. It's an industry that I think is just so important. It looks after most of our landscape. It generates a huge proportion of our food, even if you just look at what's grown in the UK and eaten in the UK. And huge tranches of the population really don't know stuff that farmers take for granted. So to cast a little bit of light on some of those areas was also a fun thing to do.
Fantastic. And we look forward to more of that in your later books too.
Mm-hmm.
So now, if I can ask, so we've got several people who are live on the call, and as I mentioned, we're live on YouTube. So if anyone does have any additional questions, because we didn't want this session to go on for hours and hours, we just wanted you to have a lovely quick intro to Heather and for her to answer a few questions, as well as I can't speak, as well as the ones that we've had through. If you do have any additional questions, please do pop them into the chat box, and we'll answer those. And I'm just going to have a quick check on our live. Okay, amazing. It's funny when you see yourself on lots of screens. There we go. Now, while we're waiting to see if anyone's got anything else to ask, now your book, Secret Places, is available now in all major bookstores, dependent on where you are in the world. Now, we've talked about North Yorkshire and we've talked about Norfolk, just for the international audience, that those are places in the United Kingdom, in England specifically, in the United Kingdom. So you can buy this book from Amazon, and you can also buy this book from Silverwood Books website. You can go to Heather's website, heatherpeckauthor.com, and you'll also find the links to the books on that site, or where you can buy them. So Heather, what's next? More books, same series, more series? What's happening?
The sequel, I have just agreed a publishing timetable with Silverwood Books for the sequel. So hopefully the sequel, Glass Arrows, will be out in the autumn of this year.
Yeah.
And that will continue to feature Greg Geldard and one or two other characters that you first meet in Secret Places. So I'm really quite excited about that. I always send it out to one or two dispassionate readers to get their reactions, and I'm delighted to say one of them said he read it in 72 hours because it was a page turner and he couldn't put it down.
Oh, fantastic.
I'm thrilled to bits about that. So hopefully that will keep up the standard or improve on the standard that Secret Places sets. I've got at least 2 more plots outlined for Greg Geldard to take up. So there will be at least 4 books in that series. And as I mentioned, I've got some rather different sorts of books, really the sorts of books that a parent might read to a child, that are sitting in my drawer waiting for me to do something with. Really, they cry out for illustration. So,
and any chance, Heather, you're going to publish your 11-year-old work, as in when you're 11?
Oh, I don't think so. Anytime anybody looks at that, they collapse into helpless giggles about 3 pages in. So no, I don't think so.
Well, it must be a good page turner. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so so you talked about those books, and if people want to find out more information about what you're writing, what you're doing, if they want to find out more information about the characters, where can they go?
Go to my website, www.heatherpeckauthor.com, and you'll find there's an opportunity there to sign up for my monthly newsletter, which gives you some information about what I'm working on, anything that's happening that I think might be of interest, and also an opportunity to participate in creating the books. So in February, for example, I asked people to vote on the name for the tortoiseshell kitten that Greg Geldard acquires during the course of Glass Arrows. So votes are coming in.
And how can people vote and get involved in that?
They'll find it on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
They can also sign up to the newsletter, and I'll send them the February one, and then they can vote. But either route.
Or you could also put it on Twitter if you wanted.
I could put it on Twitter too. Yeah.
There we go. And you can
maybe not LinkedIn.
No, well, I don't know. And you pin it to your profile as well, and it'll be the first thing they see when they land on there. Perfect. Marvelous. Okay, so I don't see any questions. That means that you did such a good job, Heather, at answering all the questions and giving people all the information that they need. So thank you so much for all attending. If you do have any additional questions, as Heather mentioned, you can go to her website, www.heatherpeckauthor.com, and you can get in contact with Heather through that website as well. There are the links to the book, and also make sure that you sign up to her newsletter so that you're finding out what's happening next. Yeah, so thanks very much. We just had a comment come in just to say thank you was really interesting. So that's great.
Yeah, thank you, Liz.
So thank you so much, Heather. Is there anything that you'd like to say to everyone before we go?
Just a huge thank you. My one aim is to write books that people will enjoy reading. I hope you enjoy reading Secret Places, and I hope you'll enjoy reading Glass Arrows in due course. I get such a thrill and a kick out of reading, and so if I can provide a little bit of that for other people, then that's all the boxes ticked for me. And thank you for coming along this afternoon.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody. See, look, we're pretty much nearly to 30 minutes, so that was pretty decent. So thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. I know Heather's going to enjoy her champers.
Absolutely.
And I'll enjoy my water.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, everybody. Take care. Thank you so much.